Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here at Tonight in America. In a few moments, I hope that we will have our guest, Paris Denard, on. He's one of the finest gentlemen that I've had the pleasure of meeting. He is now a spokesman for the Republican National Committee out of Washington, D.C. He's running a little late. He's a guy that runs around and tries to meet every commitment. So hopefully we'll have him come on, and I'll be checking from time to time. And I'm sure that once he gets here, you're going to find some very, very interesting news coming out of Washington, D.C. But before we move on with any type of discussion tonight, a lot of people have asked, well, how many people are actually watching our broadcast, and where are they watching our broadcast from? Well, we did find out, folks. And this past month, to give you an idea of the where and how many, out of Canada, an average now. These are averages. Some are more, some maybe a little less. But out of Canada, our broadcasts, our viewership is 22,434. Out of the United States, 20,400. India, 3,800. Australia, 877. The United Kingdom, 457. I found this country rather interesting. Ukraine, 618. Brazil, 291. Tunisia, 266 viewers. And then South Africa, 265. So those are the statistics that we have as of now. We think there are some more. We're doing some more digging. And the question people will ask is, well, how is it that all of these countries have begun to tune in to the broadcast? Now, we're talking the broadcast on Thursday nights, Tonight in Canada, as well as what we have here as Tonight in America. And it's just you're sharing. Those of you who are sharing these broadcasts, they're letting the people know far and wide what's going on in our countries, and it's encouraging them. The free people of these nations are being encouraged by what the Canadians are doing and by what we're here in the United States doing with regard to fighting for our freedom and our liberty. So, my hat's off to you. My hat is absolutely off to you for the good work that you're doing to advance freedom and liberty. And what a fine example of what peaceful protests can do, as what peaceful people can do under the most strenuous and difficult and most extraordinary situations that have been put on them, or shall I even add burdens that have been put on them by their governing bodies. So let's get to something here that's happened in the United States, that continues to happen here in the United States with regard to our individual liberties and rights. And I tell you what, folks, I'm going to start with something here that I think is very, very important because it does involve Canada to a degree. Well, before we do that, folks, I think our friend Paris is joining us. Here he is. Paris, hold on there, buddy. Okay. Hey, let me just get to Paris here, folks. Paris, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry about the delay. Good to see you, my friend.
Listen, I just shared with our audience that you might be a little late, and I know you're busy now. The last time I saw you was, I think, in D.C. You and I, if you remember, did a lot of hits on Newsmax, Fox, etc. So it's like a reunion for me.
It is. It's so good to see you again. We did a ton of hits during the campaign trail. I am here in D.C. At the Republican National Committee is where I'm working. I'm at home, my home office now, but I'm just so excited to see you and be on the program.
Well, it's a pleasure. If you could raise your microphone volume a little, that would be terrific.
Oh, sure.
Or get closer to the mic. That would be great.
Let me just.
Yeah, folks, it's great having guests on like Paris because we're going to be talking about something that is on the minds of a lot of Americans and a lot of people. And
how is
Paris,
that good now?
Yes, yeah.
Great.
What's happening here in America with regard to the Republican Party? This is what I want to talk to you about. I've always believed that the Republican Party is truly America's last best hope in the fight for freedom and liberty. I really believe that, more so today than ever before. President Reagan, as you well know, talked about unifying the party. After primaries, let's come together and let's elect to office the Republicans that won those primaries. And he put to death the notion of a third party. So if you could help clear this up for a lot of people who have asked questions, what are we doing to unify the party, discouraging third parties, and at the same time, and I know the great work that the Republican National Committee is doing but the grassroots people are kind of unaware of what's going on because the media is not going to give us a fair shake. It's yours, Paris.
Well, that's such a good question, Stephen. Kellyanne Conway says that she's a party girl. And what she means by that is she's a person who likes the Republican Party. And so I always say now I'm a party guy in the sense that I like the Republican Party. And I believe that the strongest force that we have in politics is to have a vibrant Republican National Committee, which is the only entity that is able to do what we do in terms of putting the boots on the ground, door knocking, getting the data to the candidates and their campaigns, and doing all the GOTV or the get out the vote work that's so necessary to help our nominees get across the finish line in the general election. And so when it comes to people like Ronald Reagan, we can look back and see how he was a unifier. Ronald Reagan had no problem, like Donald Trump, to be quite frank, with bringing people in who have maybe at one point were not on board, but he understood for the betterment of the party, for the strength of conservative ideas and ideals and values to be implemented, we had to have a united entity going forward to defeat the Democrats. The Democrats and the liberal policies that we see are the real true enemy. That's the problem. That's what we have to be working against, not our own. And so when you have, third parties, I know President George H.W. Bush, he was very resentful, even until his end days, did not even utter the word Ross Perot because he felt that Ross Perot cost him the election because he ran as a third party and got a considerable amount of votes. And so I think ultimately for your viewers worldwide, when they look at this political system, the question has to be, do we want to have a strong Republican candidate that we can get behind? Or do you want to have a Democrat that doesn't have your values, doesn't have the principles, and doesn't have the policies in power? When you offer up things like a third party, when you are not willing to unify behind the Republican nominee, you run the tremendous risk of having the Democrat win. And then, because we know elections have consequences, Steve, you have the Democrat win and then the Democrat radical, liberal, progressive woke policies implemented. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now in the country.
And it's rather troubling because I saw earlier a Republican governor, I believe it was the Republican governor of Maryland, who was on Fox News earlier, and I'm watching this interview. And look, I don't know the guy, Paris, but I was troubled when he said that he would probably support the Democrat and not the Republican nominee during the primary because he didn't support him, something along those lines. But he made it clear he wasn't going to support the Republican nominee. And when the grassroots Americans, as you know, when the person's on the border of who they're going to vote for, hear that, it's a vote for a Democrat liberal who's embracing, in my view, a communist ideology. And this is what we're suffering from. So how do we overcome that? I'm asking you questions that I've been asked. And a lot of people are viewing tonight, looking for answers. What do we do? Who do we believe? What am I going to do as the mom and pop who's suffering from Democrats? Then I hear a Republican go out there and say, well, we're not going to support people in our own party.
I think you have to ignore it. I think you have to cut through the noise and ask yourself simple questions. Is my life better under Democrat control or Republican leadership? Is inflation a problem? Is crime a problem? Is not having school choice in my community an issue for me? If I've been under the failed leadership of Democrats, why would I continue to give Democrats my vote or the opportunity to serve by me not supporting the Republican nominee because somebody, their ego gets in the way or they are bitter because they lost in the primary? That's not how we win. Again, like I said before, Steve, the ultimate goal has to be to defeat the Democrats' policies because we've seen, especially with this Biden administration, that their policies do not work. And so I think that the best thing to do is to look at these kitchen table issues. Look at these issues that matter to you and your family and your community. Issues of crime and violence, issues of the economy, inflation, gas prices, issues of public safety as it relates to the increase in crime that we're seeing, but also the open border policies. We know that Democrats stand for open border, which is why the leading cause of death for 18 to 45-year-olds is fentanyl, because fentanyl is being manufactured in China and coming across the Mexican border. to the south of us. And so we have got to have people in office that do that. It can't be about ego. It can't be about only looking at my candidate until the very end. If your candidate loses in the Republican primary, that's all right. But guess what? This is who the majority want to lead the party. So that's what we need to get behind, because the ultimate issue is the alternative. The Democrat policies, liberal policies, progressive woke policies is such a terrible alternative. And so I think that the thought of having more Democrat control, more liberal progressive policy should overshadow any type of issue one Republican might have because their preferred candidate didn't get across the finish line.
I got to tell you, that's the best answer that I have heard regarding that question, because I've heard it. I've asked that question to several people and I got political talk, but boy, did you nail it, because we're living today.
Yeah.
What are the results of what the Democrat policies are? Now, with regard to the Republican National Committee, they've done an extraordinary job. I mean, I've been around for a long time, and I've never seen a Republican National Committee do the work that they're doing. And what I'm seeing, probably for the first time in a long time, is the Republican National Committee getting involved even in local elections to some degree. In other words, training people, sharing with people what they need to do to get conservatives, Republicans elected to, whether it be a school board, a city council, your state assemblies, etc. Now, I find that refreshing. And so my question to you is, are we going to keep this up? Because this has been very encouraging to a lot of people who, I'll tell you what, Paris, they never got involved in politics. They didn't care about politics. All of a sudden, they're getting involved, and they're getting involved because the Republican National Committee is saying, hey, look, just like you just articulated, here's your choice. Either you're going to accept this and live with it, or you're going to come on board the Republican train, and you're going to see a significant change in your lifestyle.
Yeah, great point. Ronna McDaniel is going to be the longest serving RNC chairperson in history. She's a grassroots focused chairwoman. She was the former chair of the Michigan Republican Party. So she understands the importance of grassroots and grassroots leadership. She always talks about making sure that we have a Republican running in every single position on the ballot, so that when people are marking, the candidate who may be at the top of the ticket right now might be a Senate candidate or a gubernatorial candidate, they want to be able to mark all the way down Republicans, because we want to have Republican support, because now more than ever we see the importance of school board elections, judicial nominations and elections, and issues on the county level all the way up to the state legislature, to the houses of Congress. So it is important to have a chairwoman in Ronna McDaniel who prides herself on putting the necessary investments together so that we are engaging also in diverse communities, Steve. We have these community centers all across the country. We have over 33 of them right now, and more still to come, opening up in the Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific, American, even the Native American community in Robeson County, North Carolina. Just opened one up in Virginia Beach for veterans, where we have these brick and mortar buildings where people can come together, meet, learn about Republican politics, learn about what we are doing and our candidates, but also we can listen to the community to see what and learn what is impacting them, so that we can be better suited as a party. That's something that started under President Trump's campaign. Ronna McDaniel, our chairman, continued it, and it's something that's been shown to be effective. We look at the inroads that we're making as we build a greater grassroots coalition of people. Our party is more diverse, our party is more inclusive, and our party is the party of the working class, the middle class, the blue-collar worker. And that's a good thing, because we are fighting for those who have traditionally been left behind by these big government Democrats who have just forgotten what is important. Republicans understand, and we're leading, and it's important.
Paris, before you came on the air, I had gone through some statistics here, just letting people know who's listening and where they're from.
Sure.
22,434 Canadians watch our broadcast.
Wow.
And of course, we've got thousands from other countries, and some in hundreds from Europe, but obviously 20,000 plus Americans, etc. But I bring this up for a reason. People from around the world are looking at America.
That's right.
They want us to be the strong America we were before. They want us to lead freedom and liberty throughout the free world. A lot of problems in Canada. This is why we have a large viewing audience from there. And some of them who knew you were coming on did email me and they pretty much said, look, we're depending on America to keep freedom and liberty rolling, not only around the world, but across the border. There are a lot of difficulties there, and I won't go through the list, but they feel very concerned about their freedom and their liberty, as we are. They're under a lot of restraints there, as we have been, the way the entire COVID situation has been handled by Biden, the lockdowns, et cetera. But they're looking at our party. It's amazing how they're watching this country. They're looking at the Republican Party as a party that can be the catalyst to help their country with regard to freedom and liberty. And now I'm getting a sense from around the world, from the emails I'm getting, that they're looking to America, but interesting enough, to the Republican Party. That to me is an awesome responsibility. And I just wanted to pass that on to you that, you know what? We got a big mission ahead, don't we, as Republicans? But I'm so grateful that they're depending on us. And so I'd ask you before you go, because I know you got a busy schedule. I wish you could stick around a little longer. But could you give them some words of encouragement that, you know, our party, the conservatives in this country are well aware of what's going on around the world with the oppressive people, the communists, what they're doing to the people in communist China and other countries. They're now looking upon this party, as I said, to be what is America's last best hope for freedom and liberty, not only here, but around the world.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point, Steve. And we can go until at least 7:25. Please, let's keep going.
Yes. But excuse me, I don't want you to go.
Right.
We're here for about 40 minutes, but you tell me when you got to go, because I know you're busy.
So I think, to your point, look, people around the world have experienced things that we frankly haven't experienced in the United States of America, because we were founded upon freedom with the Constitution, and these founding fathers, who are just amazing people, had the foresight to put together a country built on the idea of freedom. And then we had people like President Lincoln fighting to preserve the Union, because he understood that we were the greatest hope on earth. And so when you think and look around the world, and I'm listening to you talk about all the people globally, and I see them popping up and say, you know, from Alberta, and then all the other people that are posting and talking and communicating, it's because a lot of these people understand what communism is all about. They understand what fascism and socialism. They understand what dictatorships have been about. They understand what not living in true freedom and having true democracies are about, either living close to a place like that, living in a place that once had that, or having family and friends that are impacted by that. And so when you look at the United States of America, the idea is that the U.S. should be that beacon of light. The United States of America should be the greatest hope for freedom and democracy around the world, leading. The unfortunate thing is, and I think the reason why, to your point, they're coming and looking at the Republican Party, is because they look at people like Joe Biden, they look at people like Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, and the rest of the Democrats who have been leading in recent years, so-called leadership, and they see a return to things that mirror socialism, things that mirror things that aren't about freedom and opportunity. And so it's concerning that when you see that the United States of America's role in the world has been diminished because of the feckless foreign policy that we've seen. I think our allies around the world, and the people who watch your show, Steve, look at what happened in Afghanistan. And that was a year ago this week, actually. The disgusting way that America withdrew from Afghanistan, leaving at least 800 Americans behind, leaving countless allies and people who had helped fight the global war on terror behind, leaving millions of dollars worth of equipment behind, and ultimately returning the Taliban into control. We know that Al-Qaeda at one point had a safe haven in terms of the way that one of their terrorist leaders was living there for several months. And then we don't need to ever forget the sacrifice of those 13 brave soldiers who lost their lives because of the Afghanistan withdrawal that did not have to happen the way that it did. People from around the world look at what happened under the Democrat control and say, this can't be America. America doesn't leave friends behind. America doesn't leave their own citizens behind. They look at what's happening with Ms. Griner and Russia. They say, if Donald Trump was in charge, that woman would not be sitting in that jail cell. They look around the world and they saw the leadership and the strength of President Donald Trump as a Republican leader. They remember the leadership that was shown against terrorism with other Republican leaders. They look at what Ronald Reagan was able to do and people like George H.W. Bush on an international scale and historically. But more recently, they look at Donald Trump and they say, we know what real leadership looks like. We understand what it means to be a strong leader and influence. Here's the thing, Steve, influence the rest of the world and lead so that we do have peace in the Middle East like we have with the Abraham Accords, so that we did have stability when it came to not having aggressive action from North Korea with Kim Jong-il, well, because we saw President Trump work with him. He wasn't firing off missiles. We didn't have Russia thinking that they could just invade other countries like they're doing right now in the Ukraine. That didn't happen under President Trump. And so I think the global community is looking towards Republicans because they see that in the past, Republican leadership, especially on the international scale, has worked. And that's why we have a responsibility, I believe, to make sure we elect Republicans in the midterm elections, because foreign policy is part of what's going to happen in the Congress in terms of the purse strings, but also in 2024 with the Republican candidates that run eventually to be our nominee for president. We've got to take this seriously because it's not just the Republicans, it's not just our country, it's the whole world that's depending upon us to elect because they know conservative policies work, not only in our country, but worldwide.
You know, Paris, you brought up three great American presidents in your conversation with me here. Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and Donald Trump. The one thread I see that they had in common, among many threads, but the one apropos to what you have been speaking about, is peace through strength. Right. They made it clear to our enemies that if you got out of line, you would meet the full force and wrath of the United States military. But unfortunately, we don't have the military we had before. I've spoken to recruiters, Marines, Air Force, Navy, all the branches. They said morale is terrible. While our troops are being being indoctrinated in classrooms with regard to the woke agenda, our enemies are actually running commercials on their networks with U.S. troops sitting in classrooms learning about how to address a man as a woman as a man, etc., while their military is out learning how to kill us and destroy us. Once again, it gets back to what you articulated regarding the Democrat agenda and the need for the Republican Party to do everything they can do with regard to our military, which leads me to the importance of these congressional elections. Yes. We must. I'm not going to mention any names, but to hear a Republican office holder get on the air and say, well, we're in danger of losing maybe the Senate, we're keeping the Congress. I'm not a defeatist, and I know you're not. Look, we're going to take the Congress and we're going to take the Senate. There's no such thing as, well, we're not going to achieve those goals. And that's what discourages people. But having you on the air tonight, all right, and I want the listeners to understand this from around the world who are watching, this is what the truth is. Paris is encouraging us to go vote. He's letting you know what's going to take place when the Republicans take over. Paris?
Well, Steve, you're absolutely right. Look, I get my cues and my energy from two sources politically. Number one, Ronna McDaniel, who's our chairwoman. She is going crisscrossing this country, raising funds, and doing grassroots events with leaders all over the nation because she values the importance of getting out the vote, registering voters, making sure people are registered, but also actually voting and keeping the enthusiasm up, educating voters and bringing new people into the party. The other place I get my energy is from the grassroots. Because listen, I travel the country a lot, Steve, and I tell you, people are suffering. This whole notion that everything is great, Build Back Better, or whatever they want to call it, 2.0, all these different PR phrases they put on this, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a total lie because it increases inflation, it raises taxes, and it creates 87,000 new IRS agents that's going to target, actually, if you look at historically, minorities and middle class and low income people first. And so when you look at where we are as a nation, I drive my energy, I get it from the people because I see how hungry they are for change, how thirsty they are for truth and having transparency in government. When they look at the fact that the DOJ has been weaponized and when the FBI literally raided a former sitting president's personal home took his passports, expired and current activated passports, went through his wife's closets. I mean, the American people are looking at this and saying, is this America? And this is why I am so energized by where we are as a party. I see the growth. I see the enthusiasm. I see us, making tremendous inroads with diverse communities like Myra Flores down in Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley with Hispanic Americans. I believe that we have full steam ahead when it comes to taking back the House and the Senate. Is the House more of a sure thing? Yeah. If everybody votes, if everybody goes out and donates their time, donates their money, and donates whatever they can to give back to make sure these candidates win, we don't take anything for granted at the RNC. So we're going to work these next few, I think it's a little under 80 days now. We're going to be full steam ahead to take back the House, and we're going to be just as full steam ahead to take back the Senate, because we believe our candidates are better. I don't care if they may be first-time candidates. Donald Trump is a first-time candidate. Ronald Reagan didn't have a history of being in politics before he ran for governor. So there are plenty of examples of people who are everyday Americans stepping up and saying, I want to take my country back. I want to help America be the shining city on a hill. These are great Americans who are passionate, who have great ideas, and are people of integrity. And I believe that we have every opportunity to take back the House and the Senate, as long as every Republican registers to vote and votes, but also every independent-minded American and Democrat who looks at this current Democrat Party and says, I don't recognize it. I don't stand for anything that they stand for. I do not like how they're making this country less energy independent. I don't like how they're making us subservient to foreign actors. I don't like how they're having this open border, which leads to so much crime and sex trafficking and drugs. I don't like the fact that the economy is still not working for me, with high inflation, in a recession, gas prices out of control, a baby food formula that still has not been solved, and they still haven't gotten a good grasp on the pandemic, be it monkeypox or COVID-19. This administration, these Democrat policies are not working. And I think Democrats also have the opportunity to say, I may not be a Republican, that's fine, but the Democrat Party's values do not align with mine. So I'm going to cross over in the general and vote for a Republican because the future of my family, the safety of my family, my community depends upon it. My 401k, there's so many people, Steve, as you know this, my own mother, my mom's 65 years old, was thinking about, as everyone does when they hit that age, how can I retire? When can I retire? Should I retire? She looked at her 401k. She goes, there's no way I can retire because she's took a major hit. She's not alone. Think of all these senior citizens that are out here who are looking at the fact that we have more IRS agents, gas prices, and inflation, and everything costs more. Well, if you're on a fixed income, there's no more money coming in. It's just more and more.
Paris, my mother's 96. And
wow.
We just had this conversation yesterday where she sees her pension dwindling down,
exactly.
Taxes going up. Think about that. At least she has a family around her. But I'm worried about, and I know you are, what about the seniors that don't have families to help them? My wife and I went to a grocery store. The prices are double than what they were when President Trump was in office and the Republicans had some sort of control. So you're right.
Steve, and that's just the point. That's why I said, and on the onset, this is not just about Republicans. This is about independents and Democrats as well, who look at this Democrat Party and say, you're not working for me. Everything that you're doing is not helping me. I'm not better off than I was a year ago under Democrat control. And so I think that the opportunity is rich. And I think that we have a tremendous opportunity to take back the House and the Senate. We have better candidates. They have a better message, and we have better policies.
Well, I'll tell you, I'd love to have you on more, but I know you're busy. But to begin with, those of you who are viewing, you just heard a young man, a great American patriot, who just laid it out there. I mean, just laid it out there. This should be an encouragement to you by seeing how we in the United States are making the changes necessary to win our freedom back, to win our liberty back, especially those of our close friends in Canada. We know what you're going through, but just think about what Paris said to you. It's unity. It's coming together. Now, Paris, I'm going to ask you a favor, two
Yes.
favors, all right?
Yes.
The last time you and I met was at the White House Christmas party a long time ago when Donald Trump was in office. So I'm going to ask you to meet me at the White House Christmas party in 2024 when the next president of the United States is a Republican.
That sounds like a party.
Okay. And then the second one is my wife and I are planning to travel to D.C. probably in November. I'd like to look you up and I'd like to get together with you.
Both of them sound fantastic. I look forward to it, Steve.
And one shout out for Gabriella Bucci, right? Gabriella, right?
Gabriella Bucci does such a great job of getting all of our surrogates placed on television and just does a great job, because we need to get our surrogates out there, and she does a great job getting me out there, keeping me booked and busy. And so it's a full operation, full team effort, because we believe, to your earlier point, we can win the House, we can win the Senate, and we will win the presidency in 2024.
You bet. She's done an outstanding job, and she's booked me here and there. And I got to tell you, very proud of her. So I just wanted to mention that. Well, it was great seeing you, my friend. It really was. Any last words to those listeners out there?
Listen, to all of you, thank you so much for supporting programs like this, campaignforamerica.com with Steve Rogers. You know, Steve's done a tremendous job at trying to amplify conservative messages and policies and surrogates and voices. But be optimistic, be encouraged. I know things are bad out there, not just in our own country because of what we see with these Democrats, but from the liberal policies all around the world. But just hang on in there, because change is going to come when Republicans take back the House and the Senate, and in 2024, when we take back this presidency, so that we can get this country back to where it needs to be. And it's not just about our country, because America First means we will do that. We will have an America First agenda, but that does not mean that we won't lead and make sure that our allies are not put in a position where they do not have a strong United States of America. Because when we have a strong USA, it's a strong world. And that's what we want. I know that so many of you think that things aren't looking good, but I'm telling you, hold on, things are going to get better. Republicans are ready to lead, and we will lead.
Thank you, my friend. I salute you, and God bless you.
God bless you, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, folks, you talk about an American patriot and an American hero. You know, we look for heroes. We just saw one. He's a hero because he's been out there doing the work that we all need to do. Now, I'm going to ask you to stand by. I'm going to be back in a moment. We have some news that I was going to talk about Thursday night, which I still will talk about it Thursday night to Canadians. We have some news for you, some important news. So give me about a minute or two, and I'll be right back. Stand by. All right, welcome back, folks. Thanks for standing by. In fact, there's two bits of information I want to share with, obviously, people across the United States, but also those of you in Canada who are watching. Well, I said all along that somewhere along the line that the policies of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau would affect the American national security and affect in some way this country. Well, it has. Yesterday, United States Congresswoman Elsie Stefanik from New York has sent a very clear, unmistakable message to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for him to put an end to the mandatory use of the ArriveCan app for those seeking to enter Canada and vice versa. What has happened, Trudeau's policies are now affecting the tourism into New York State and here in the United States in general. I've noticed here in New Jersey, there's been a decrease of Canadians coming into New Jersey, especially our shore area, with regard to vacations and holidays. We have some people looking into the numbers of people that have rented or at least sold properties to Canadians during these summer months. We're just curious as to see where those numbers are. But clearly, the state of New York has been affected, and the Congresswoman is now calling on the Prime Minister to put an end to this mandatory use of ArriveCan. And believe me, it's not going to stop there, folks. We're going to continue to keep on informing our congressional representatives and Americans across the country and people around the world exactly what's going on in that country. Now, something else that we just learned yesterday involves the Canadian people and the United States, if you will. Now, we have been asking for a couple of weeks for pastors, church leaders, clergymen and women in the United States to get in touch with us. And we would schedule a private invite-only meeting between these church leaders and those pastors and church leaders and clergy in Canada who've been jailed, arrested, and put in prison. As a result of doing what? As a result of being charged with charges that one would only expect to come out of communist China. Well, we're waiting for pastors to respond. Some have. I want to see more respond. We need to make sure that the clergy in this country clearly understand what's coming. If they don't support now their brothers and sisters in Canada. Well, I said that a couple of weeks ago. I said a couple of weeks ago these words: you may see it come here to the United States. Get up now, get the courage, stand up, and help your Canadian brothers and sisters now. Well, the time has come. Now is the time. Because yesterday, folks, or even a couple of days ago, I believe, I'm going to read this to you, a letter sent by the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, to the Cornerstone Church in Batavia, New York, threatened the church in advance of its hosting a Reawaken America tour with threatening them with investigation and prosecution of, listen to this now, of acts of violence, intimidation, threats, or harassment toward others based on a belief or perception of characteristics including race, national origin, gender, and sexual orientation. Folks, I've got to tell you, this is the first time that I've ever seen in this country the government, in this case, an attorney general, just go way, way, way beyond the bounds of the Constitution and threaten a sovereign church, threaten pastors that if they begin to develop programs, or even in this case, it sounds like preaching sermons that will address sexual orientation, that will address communist policies, that will address all of these issues that are addressed in the Bible, that they are subject to prosecution. Miss Attorney General, I am not afraid of you. Americans are not afraid of you. American patriots are not afraid of you. But you really need to get a checkup. You really need to get something checked up in here, because nobody in their right mind, and I've been in law enforcement for many, many years, nobody in their right mind would come up with such a ghastly, terrible, outrageous letter against the pastor of any church in this country. Now, you ought to run for attorney general in China, in communist China, because in my view, that's where you belong. Because to do this is an affront to every single person in this country, the United States of America, and perhaps people around the world who love their freedoms, and especially the freedom of worship. To try to muzzle pastors who are getting behind a sacred pulpit. I just had a Bible study, a fireside chat last night about the sovereignty of God. I wish I had this on my hands before we aired. You would have been the poster child, the poster person for communism. You got to be ashamed of yourself, for goodness sakes. You talk about churches and clergymen and women who who are doing things that, according to you, are against the law, acts of violence, intimidation. What are you doing? Are you going to call them terrorists next? You see, folks, this is what we're dealing with regard to the Democrats in this country, liberals and others, and communists around the world. They're abusing their power. Now, I'm hoping that somebody in New York, some Republican, I mean, are there any courageous elected officials out there anymore, even Democrats? I mean, none of you men and women, do you have any guts, for goodness sakes? I mean, you see something like this and, oh, that's okay. She's a big mouth. It'll go away. No, they're not going away. That's the point. They're not going away because your silence is tacit consent. And they're saying, well, they're not speaking up now, meaning those we elected to office to represent our best interest. They're saying, well, we're going to go away. Well, I know I'm not going away. And I know the supporters of Campaign for America, the freedom fighters in Canada, the freedom fighters in the United States, freedom fighters around the world, they're going to work within the framework of the law and make sure people like this Attorney General will never, ever again be elected to office or appointed to any office. And we're going to do it within the framework of the law peacefully through the electoral process because that works. They fear us, folks. I'm telling you, they fear us. We don't need to fear them. We don't need to fear anyone. They need to fear us. Because through the electoral process, through the process of impeaching people, of using the laws that God has given us to put together to preserve, protect, and defend our freedom and liberty, we win and they lose. But could you imagine that? So again, the line, folks, that I've talked about that is weaving together Canada and the United States and bringing other countries in. I read that list to you. If you're from South Africa, if you're from the United Kingdom, if you're from any country on this earth that's listening in, do me a favor. Email me. There is campaignforamerica.com. Email me. Get in touch with me because come hell or high water, I'll tell you what we'll do. I know there are time zones and it's nighttime there when it's daytime here, etc. But we'll work a way where we could come live on a broadcast in the morning, noon, whatever it's going to take. We'll do it. We'll do it, folks. I actually was on the air at midnight one night speaking to individuals who were in the Philippines. Well, we can do it again over and over and over again. And you know what? What I'd love to do is to make sure that if we can, listen, we've got the Canadian flag in here. We've got the Israeli flag in here. Maybe we're going to have the South African flag coming. And obviously the United Kingdom, who a lot of people from that country has been in touch with us. But we're going to come together. We're going to come together as a force that is going to be contended with by the enemies of freedom and liberty. So we put the Communist Party on notice, as Reagan did in the 50s and 60s, as Americans and Canadians and freedom-loving people around the world have done forever. We're putting the Communist Party in our countries on notice that your days are numbered. And those of you who support these ideologies of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin, going after our freedom of worship, going after our Second Amendment here in the United States, our freedom of speech, our freedom of assembly, well, we're still here, aren't we? All those who were on your side in the past, they're gone. They're not even a footnote in history. Well, you're going to be joining them soon. Because when we take the United States Congress, when the Canadian people take their parliament again, and when people around the world who love freedom and liberty take control of their destiny again, we're going to see some big changes. Because through prayer, through faith, and through work, we will not surrender. We will not give up. And we will win. Just look at history. We always win. So, folks, that's it for tonight. A couple things. Real quick, I'm going to show you this email address, all right? Now, this, folks, is a direct link to our new book, 22+1 Detours. I'm overwhelmed by the response. But I tell you what, I'm really encouraged and overwhelmed with the letters. I mean, the heartfelt letters where they've read the book. They said it, they could read it in one reading, and many people have told me it's changed their lives, it's changed their perspective on things, and it's got them closer to God. I'll tell you, some of the letters I received really caused my eyes to swell up because they were sharing with me the difficulties that they were facing in life, and always wondered why God had detoured them down certain roads, and then realized that truly man's disappointments, their disappointments were God's appointments. And that's what Detours Plus One is all about. And what was really encouraged to me was that the title of the book, 22 plus 1 Detours, we've shared with people in the beginning of the book, and I've shared it with you on the air. You know, you want to know why it's 22 plus 1 detours? Well, there's 22 detours written about in that book. But you will find out at the end of that book who the plus 1 detour is. So I encourage you, folks, it's $7, and we put it on a PDF format. Why? Because that is the cheapest and bestest, most inexpensive way we could get it to you without anybody paying for shipping and printing and all kinds of stuff. And the real neat thing about putting a book, folks, on PDF format is we never run out of supplies. We could just send out all kinds of PDF formats to everybody, whoever wants them. And I encourage you, reprint them, print them, and pass them out, send them out. It's all about getting the word out. RogersAmerica.com. There it is. It'll be a link right to our bookstore, our library, and I encourage you to order it. That's it, folks. So please spread the word. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Tonight in America, tonight in Canada, Thursday night, 7:00 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to have a very, very special guest. In fact, a guest who was on last week, and we had a bit of a technical issue here. But I'll keep you updated. Again, the dread. I want you to think about what I said. What's going on in Canada, we're beginning to see it happen here in America, but it's backfiring on these terrible people because when the dread, it gets weak, right? Well, the dread that's here in America and here in Canada, it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Remember, they lose, we win. God bless you all. Thank you for joining me. See you Thursday night on Tonight in Canada. And remember, RogersAmerica.com. Please, it's going to be worth your while getting 22 plus 1 detours. Thank you. Have a great evening.